Hi everyone, I'm Andy, and this is the AI Breakdown. Welcome to your weekly news edition where I'll cover what happened in AI last week, why it matters, all in about 10 minutes. Let's start with Google. They confirmed a $40 billion plan to build 3 new data centers in Texas by 2027. On top of expansions, at existing sites, one campus will be in Armstrong County, 2 in Haskell County, and the idea is simple. Make sure Google has enough compute to train and run its next generation of Gemini models and Google Cloud AI services. Sundar Pichai is pitching it as a win-win. He says the project will create thousands of jobs, pump money into skills training, and even help accelerate energy affordability initiatives. Throughout Texas, Governor Greg Abbott is absolutely thrilled, calling it Google's biggest investment in any state and a sign that Texas is becoming a serious AI hub. From a founder or operator's point of view, this is another reminder that data centers are the factories of the AI era. Google is basically saying, we're going to spend at this scale because we expect AI demand to be there for years. They're not alone either. OpenAI, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Anthropic, they're all throwing tens of billions at similar projects. Public sentiment is a bit more mixed. Investors liked it, Alphabet's stock got a boost, helped by Berkshire Hathaway quietly turning up with a $4.3 billion stake in Alphabet at the same time. But a lot of people in Texas are asking perfectly reasonable questions. Can the grid actually cope, given how fragile it looked in previous winters? What happens to water use, noise, and local infrastructure when you drop 3 hyperscale campuses into West Texas? Zooming out, this is part of a $1 trillion AI infrastructure wave. And Oracle's planning to pile on another $38 billion in debt to fund its AI and cloud build-out, on top of roughly $104 billion it already owes. Some bond investors weren't keen, prices on several Oracle issues dropped, and yields ticked up. The core issue is simple. Oracle, like a lot of big tech, is currently spending more on AI infrastructure than it earns from operations. It's betting that hosting OpenAI workloads, signing long-term AI cloud deals, and keeping share buybacks going will all work out in the wash. Some people see this as a bump in the road. Others, including Michael Burry of Big Short fame, are more worried. He's been pointing out that the sector is stretching depreciation in a way that could understate AI costs by something like $176 billion through 2028, inflating reported profits along the way. Basically, by doing this, these companies spread out the cost of their equipment over a longer period, which lowers the annual depreciation expense and therefore inflates reported profits. Burry argues that while the typical product cycle of advanced AI hardware is about 2 to 3 years, companies are depreciating this equipment over 5 to 6 years or more. He has called this one of the more common frauds of the modern era. This is part of growing concerns that we are in an AI bubble. Multiple analysts, investors, and financial publications have raised alarms driven by soaring valuations of AI-focused companies, aggressive spending, and obvious parallels to past tech bubbles. Not everyone agrees, and it's something we should all keep a close eye on. OpenAI's internal numbers leaked this week, and they are intense. According to reports, OpenAI expects to rack up eye-watering losses every year until at least 2028, including around $74 billion of operating loss in 2028 alone. Over the next 8 years, they're apparently planning to commit more than $1.4 trillion to data centers and compute. A huge chunk of that is about running models like Sora 2, their viral video app, which is said to cost on the order of $15 million a day to operate, while it's basically free for users. The theory is that by 2030, revenue finally catches up and OpenAI flips into profitability. It's a classic growth now, profits later play, very reminiscent of early Uber or Amazon. That financial picture collided with politics this week when their CFO floated the idea of government loan guarantees to help finance chip factories. That sounded to a lot of people like OpenAI asking for a taxpayer-backed safety net if things go wrong. Sam Altman moved quickly to shut that down. He stressed that they have had informal conversations about supporting the wider US chip supply chain, but he was explicit that taxpayers shouldn't backstop private data center projects or bail out companies that make bad bets. His line was very clear. If OpenAI screws up and can't fix it, it should fail. and the market, not the government, should deal with it. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got Anthropic, and they're making a very different, though still massive bet. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, has announced a $50 billion plan to build its own custom data centers across the US in partnership with a cloud provider called FluidStack. They're starting in Texas and New York from 2026, with bespoke facilities tuned for their AI workloads. They expect the build-out to create around 800 permanent roles and 2,400 construction jobs, and they're pitching it as critical infrastructure for what CEO Dario Amodei calls AI at the frontier, systems that can accelerate scientific discovery and solve genuinely hard problems. The interesting bit is the business model behind it. Anthropic is much more enterprise-focused than OpenAI. Over 300,000 business customers account for around 80% of its revenue, and internal projections reportedly have them hitting about $70 billion in revenue and $17 billion in positive cash flow by 2028. In other words, they think this infrastructure pays for itself quite quickly. For us, the potential upside is more control and resilience. A provider that owns its own data centers can, in theory, give you better guarantees on performance, security, pricing, and even data residency than someone who's purely renting from the big clouds. But it feeds the same big question: are we in a healthy build-out phase or an AI data center bubble where everyone is racing to pour concrete based on revenue curves that might never fully materialize? Let's pause on the infrastructure and take a look at the results of an interesting survey. IBM's Institute for Business Value released a report that basically says your biggest AI problem is your data. They surveyed 1,700 senior data leaders and found corporate data is still stubbornly siloed. IBM's Chief Data Officer, Ed Lovely, called data silos the Achilles heel of AI strategy. His line that jumped out at me was this: when data lives in disconnected systems, every AI initiative turns into a 6 to 12-month data cleansing project. Teams spend more time hunting for and aligning data than actually generating insights. The numbers are pretty stark. 92% of chief data officers say they want AI projects to drive business value, but only 29% feel they have clear metrics to measure that value. At the same time, 77% say they're struggling to hire or keep top data talent, and 82% are recruiting for AI-related roles that literally didn't exist a year ago. The flip side is, when companies do the boring data work, the gains are huge. Medtronic is a great example. They used the AI to match invoices to purchase orders, took the process from about 20 minutes per invoice down to 8 seconds, with over 99% accuracy. Matrix Renewables built a centralized data platform and saw reporting time drop by 75% and downtime cut by 10%. Back to products and risk, because OpenAI managed to spark a whole separate controversy this week with Sora 2, their AI video app. Public Citizen, which is a consumer advocacy group, has formally asked OpenAI to pull Sora 2 from the market. Their argument is that the app makes it trivial to generate hyper-realistic deepfakes, and that we're drifting into a world where people simply can't trust what they see on a screen. Sora 2 lets you spin up eerie, convincing 10-second clips, including face-swapped cameos of real people with hardly any effort. It rocketed up the app charts on iOS and has now landed on Android as well. Unsurprisingly, social feeds are getting flooded with fakes, some of them funny, some of them malicious. Public Citizen's tech advocate J.B. Branch summed it up: "Our biggest concern is the potential threat to democracy. People can't really trust what they see. They're especially worried about hoaxes around elections and about non-consensual sexualized deepfakes of ordinary people." OpenAI has already had to react. They've banned some celebrity deepfakes after complaints from estates and unions, and they admit that over-moderation is frustrating, but say they need to be conservative while the world adjusts. Even so, investigations keep finding Sora-generated abuse getting through the filters. Before we wrap, I want to zoom out from the mega projects and look at what's happening on the ground inside organizations, because there was one more useful data point this week. A survey from the Association for Project Management here in the UK asked 500 senior business leaders how AI is actually affecting them. Nearly half, 44%, said AI is already having a positive impact on their bottom line, more than double the 20% who saw a negative hit. 43% said AI has improved productivity. Only 13% reported it made things worse. Technology firms are, unsurprisingly, out in front. 56% of tech leaders said AI is making their workforce more productive, and a striking 71% said it's lifting profits. But even in more traditional sectors like manufacturing, healthcare, construction, and government, roughly half the respondents reported a profit uplift. Where are they seeing the gains? Mainly in IT, finance and accounting, R&D, and customer service, exactly the kind of well-defined, information-heavy work where AI assistance, automation, and better analytics shine. The minority who did see productivity drop mostly blamed project issues, scope creep, poor integration, lack of skills. In other words, classic project management problems rather than inherent flaws in the tech. To me, this is encouraging. It backs up what I hear from a lot of you. When AI is thoughtfully integrated, with clear use cases and change management, it does move the needle. The hype is noisy, but beneath it there are very real, very practical wins, already showing up in the P&L. That's all for this week's AI Roundup. If you found value in this breakdown, please leave a rating and hit subscribe. See you next week.